Norfolk City Council. I'll call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. If you now please join me rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Grandquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
McCarthy. Murin.
Here.
Snorton.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here. Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Who was that exactly? Did you get a second? Motion second? Two motions, no second.
Yeah.
Okay, good? All right. Now there's been a couple motions and at least 1 second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Item six, then would look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 25 on the council agenda under special presentations. A couple special presentations tonight. The first, item 25, is from the Norfolk Fire Division for award recognition. So I will ask Chief Tim Rogge to come forward, I think. There we go. And the floor is yours, sir.
All right, so Mayor and Council, I brought one of our fire lieutenants forward with me, Brock Soderberg. We were the recent recipients of American Heart Association Silver Award, which is associated with stroke and STEMI care for pre-hospital. We're very, very proud of that. It's a true testament to our team, to our medical direction and Dr. Serber, the men and women that sit here tonight from our staff that are truly the faces of NFD and that put forth their best foot every day, even though there are times it feels like the car's stacked against them on certain calls. So it's a remarkable team. A lot of these folks are here off duty and then are on duty shift. I couldn't be more proud of them and their efforts for keeping us safe. And we have an incredible amount of support from this community and this group behind me here. And we feel that, which is why we will continue to always put our best foot forward for you in this community and everybody around us. So with that, I want to turn it over to Lieutenant Soderberg. He's one of our 3 lieutenants that really hones in on EMS with our medical director, Dr. Serber. So go ahead, Brock.
So this recognition is from the American Heart Association. It's basically, in a nutshell, it's a year-long overlook of how we treat stroke and heart attack patients. And that year is divided up in 4 quarters, so even if we do, at the end of the year, we do a 90% job, we fail in 1 quarter, we don't get any recognition. So at the end of the year, that helped us out, everybody did their part. But again, echoing what Chief Rogge said, all of your support, the community, especially that guy right there, Dr. Serber, and then Lieutenant Bob Nelson, they were the forefront, got us started in all this.
Very good. Thank you for providing that background. I think the notice on this award was given a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I think I can speak for all the elected officials in saying it's easy to be proud of the work that you guys do in literally saving lives on a day-to-day basis. But to have that kind of recognition on a national level just speaks to the excellence that is embraced by this division day in, day out. So we certainly thank you for your work helping protect our community and literally saving lives. Dr. Serber, thank you for being here tonight and your years of service to this community. I think Nick's ready to take a picture, of the recognition. So everybody from the team, you want to ask them to come forward and we'll get a photo.
Need more over there. Yeah, shift. Oh, wait, come over there. The city of Norfolk letters are our center, guys. Yeah.
Take a knee, folks. Take a knee.
Nudging on the end, Sam and Trevor. Should be good, ready? 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you once again, Chief and Lieutenant, for leading that presentation, and all the team that was able to be here tonight. Thank you. Item 26, under special presentations, we will now hear a presentation of the Norfolk Multimodal Transportation Action Plan from Anna Allen, our Assistant City Engineer. Anna.
Good evening. I'll just give a quick introduction. We have Tool Design here and Olson and Associates. They'll be giving a presentation on our Norfolk Multimodal Transportation Action Plan. So this action plan is a result of that Safe Streets for All grant that we received a little while back. And so we are in the middle of putting together that action plan and looking for community engagement, and they have so they're going to let you know kind of where we're at on that action plan and what to look for moving forward. So I will go ahead and introduce Mitch Kaufman with Tool Design, and then Kyle McLaughlin with Olson and Associates. He might not be here quite yet, but he's on his way. So thank you.
Floor is yours. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present an update on the Multimodal Transportation Action Plan. So continuing in the vein of saving lives, that's kind of the whole intent of this action plan. So I'm Mitch Kaufman with Tool Design out of our Minneapolis, Minnesota office. I'll be the project manager that's facilitating this process and delivering you a plan that can, in fact, save lives for people using the transportation system. And with me I have Kyle, who's out of their Lincoln office, gives us a local presence, and they're doing a lot for that engagement that Anna had mentioned. So this is what I'll be covering today. Very briefly, I'll go over a lot of information very quickly, and to try to keep this brief, and we'll leave time for questions after. So just a bit of background on the action plan. So the 2017 comprehensive plan was adopted by the city, called for the development of a comprehensive multimodal transportation network. In 2022, the city adopted the Bicycling and Walking Network Plan, which recommended expanding biking and walking networks and introduced complete streets concepts for some corridors. And then in 2022, the city adopted Resolution 2022-36, prior to applying for that Safe Streets and Roads, or SS4A funding through the U.S. Department of Transportation. And then in 2023, the city was awarded that federal grant to develop a comprehensive safety action plan that also includes a complete streets plan as well, which we are calling the Multimodal Transportation Action Plan, which is a mouthful, so I'm going to call it an action plan. That's what we intend to recommend actions. So here is the verbiage in the resolution, which is our overarching goal. Overarching goal for this plan is to achieve 0 roadway fatalities and serious injuries within the city limits and the 2-mile extra jurisdictional limits by 2028. So the action plan calls for an approach using the safe systems approach and complete streets approach. So you may ask yourself, what are those? So safe system approach is a comprehensive approach to roadway safety. Over 40,000 people die on America's roads every year, and roughly 2.8 million have life-altering injuries on America's roads. So this safe systems approach looks at safety first and foremost. So that is priority 1, with the understanding that humans make mistakes, and those mistakes should not lead to death or those life-altering injuries. And you, as an elected body, who manage roadways and various other city departments, such as the fire department, incident management, have an opportunity to address the epidemic of roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Just some ideas here. So you have safe roads. You can create your safe roadways through roadway design. You can promote and encourage safe speeds on those roadways. You encourage safe and responsible driving behavior and roadway user behavior. And then it's very timely that the public safety professionals were up here creating and coordinating incident management practices. And then, so integrating with the safe systems approach is the complete streets approach. They really do go hand in hand. So the addition of the complete streets approach adds focus on providing access for everyone, safe access for people of all ages, all abilities, all incomes, all races, all genders, no matter which mode of transportation they use. And then people walking and biking are much more vulnerable on our streets and at greater risk of death and serious injury. So why is Norfolk developing an action plan? So this is what we heard when the city was pursuing the funding, and then we initiated this process earlier this year, and we heard from some key stakeholders that the city desires to create a safer multimodal transportation system for walkers, cyclists, transit users, motorists, and all other modes to reduce and ultimately eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries. Understanding that this is a process, it's not going to happen overnight, to improve local capacity to address safety concerns, and also there is funding available for implementation of projects and strategies recommended by an action plan through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So we want to make sure we meet the eligibility requirements to pursue grant funding after the plan is adopted. These are kind of the major elements of the action plan. I'll cover these in just a touch more detail. Thing to take away here is we'll be wrapping this plan up in the spring of 2025. So goal setting involves establishing a goal to eliminate and to reduce and ultimately eliminate serious injuries and fatalities on the roadways, so hence the resolution. Planning structure is also a requirement of that. Planning structure in this vein means that you'll have a committee that is responsible for oversight of the action plan development, implementation, and monitoring. So we do have an action plan committee that is meeting tomorrow for the first time, and they will meet several times during the development of this plan. So data collection and policy review will be assessing current policies, plans, guidelines, and standards to identify opportunities to improve how processes prioritize transportation safety in the project development process. An action plan will discuss implementation through adoption of revised or potentially new guidelines, standards, or policies. Also includes an analysis, several analyses actually. We are in the process of finalizing these, so I'm just going to give you a brief look at where we're at data-wise. But these analyses provide a detailed understanding of the issues that will inform recommendations to address specific challenges on Norfolk's streets. So the first is our safety analysis. We looked at the 5 most current years of available crash data, so that is 2016 to 2020. Over that 5 years, there were a total of 2,260 crashes on Norfolk roadways. However, for this safety action plan, we are focusing on those resulting in deaths and serious injuries. So they were 57 FSI, which is fatal and serious injury crashes. You'll probably hear me say that a couple times. So 10 fatalities and 47 serious injuries over that 5-year time frame, which is about 11 and a half life-altering crashes every year on Norfolk streets. So that is not to mention all of the families and friends and community that is impacted by those. We're also doing a complete streets analysis, which will look at barriers and opportunities for increased walking and biking and using other active transportation modes, and as well as an equity analysis that will provide data that will allow us to potentially address potential inequities in transportation service. The plan will also include a toolbox of proven safety countermeasures to address the specific safety issues that are occurring on Norfolk roadways. And it will also include additional design elements specifically to address access for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other active transportation modes. The plan will identify opportunities to implement a toolbox and then create a framework to integrate those tools into the transportation project development process. I'll look at opportunities to integrate those tools into projects that are currently in the pipeline, capital improvement program from the city as well as through the state or the county, and then identifying funding opportunities for those interventions through local, state, and federal programs. And then a plan will include a list of recommended strategies for short-term implementation. Prioritization will use the analysis that we're wrapping up right now, as well as the public engagement that we're going through right now and throughout the process. And then there will be several concepts that come out of it that help visualize the types of improvements that will be recommended. Plan will, based upon the plan goals and strategies, we'll also include performance measures to gauge the progress on achieving those success in the goal. And then the final report, an executive summary, will document the planning process in a graphic-rich format, providing a game plan for how to achieve the community's goals. And with that, hopefully Kyle's here.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Hello, Kyle McLaughlin with Olson Transportation Planner. They said he was too tall. They couldn't hear him in the back, so it's no problem. I'm much shorter. It's all good. And apologize for being late. But the reason that I took my time to get here, we started handing out the different materials and trying to get the word out into the different businesses around town. So Mitch mentioned it a couple times, but engagement is really important in this endeavor. Making sure that we reach out into all parts of the community, making sure we hear different voices, different perspectives, different types of people using the infrastructure in different ways, and because everybody's kind of opinion is really based on how they use the infrastructure. So we want to make sure we hear as many different people as we can. The engagement will kind of center around 3 core aspects. So the first being an action plan committee, which will be comprised of a few different representatives from the community, some city staff, and a couple of other kind of key stakeholders. Then obviously, engagement, public engagement, and I'll talk about all this here in a second. And then lastly, individual kind of direct conversations with staff themselves, just to make sure we understand kind of all the ins and outs of how infrastructure is created, how we go about making the decisions, and several of those kind of key aspects. So as I mentioned, the action plan committee will be made up of staff. It'll be made up of representatives from the aging population, representatives from a couple of different sectors of the public. And we'll meet several times throughout the process. As Mitch mentioned, we're going to meet tomorrow as the kickoff to kind of get introduced to what the project is, start talking our way through goals and objectives, what this plan can and can't do for the community, and how we make it really as useful as possible. Some of the other, I'll touch on I guess I don't remember if I have a schedule in here, but so some of the topics, the other topics will be that high injury network based on that previous crashes that we just saw, and then prioritization and kind of understanding the community feedback that we receive from the virtual and from the public engagement. So talking about virtual engagement itself, we have a website. It is live as of, I believe, late last week. That's one of the things that I've got in the back. I've got flyers that have code to get you to the website. I cannot remember, Mitch, if at the end of this will have a link to the website or... Yep, so it'll be on the city's website. Yep, thanks. And we have a survey, very intensive survey, but it's really meant to understand all aspects of the infrastructure. We want to ask, how does it feel being a pedestrian? How does it feel being a bicyclist? Where is it dangerous to be driving in your vehicle? Kind of all across the gamut of the infrastructure. And then lastly, we're also going to host a number of stakeholder meetings. So those are pointed one-on-one meetings with specific types of groups, right? So we're going to take, and I'll detail them out here in a minute, but really just diving into what is your specific experience with this infrastructure and how do we make it work for this kind of group. And then as far as in-person engagement, we're going to be doing a number of pop-ups. So we're going to be working with city staff and have kind of a pop-up in a box, essentially, and go to the farmer's market, go to the music in the park, go to concerts, go to all kinds of different events to just get, again, that different perspective from those different users, and doing it as many times as we can. We'll have a public open house towards the end of this month. That's July 30th, and we're looking forward to that. And then after this kind of first phase, we're also going to host some walking tours where we take people out, we walk along specific corridors, and we kind of feel what it's like to be a pedestrian. We look and we see, the cracks in the sidewalks and things, and that'll be very informative. The stakeholder groups that I mentioned, those 8 stakeholder groups, so this is kind of what they'll be comprised of. We're absolutely looking for additional voices and different people, so we're gonna kind of lean on the action plan committee and a few others to make sure that these groups are, have different voices, make sure we get parents of people who walk, we make sure we get the YMCA, make sure we get the business owners and get all those different voices, and like I said, those perspectives that they can provide. Here's the kind of website and web map. So this is just as a standard, not as a standard, as a kind of existing survey on the website. We'll have a link to it via the city's website as well as on the actual project website. And like I said, it's a pretty robust survey. It includes a mapping exercise, and we do have hard copies too. That the mapping is a little bit more difficult for the hard copies, but we want to know where people live and things like that. So I want to make sure I'm not rambling on and we get everything we need to into the meeting. But I'll kind of move on to schedule. So the engagement schedule is this next month is the big push. So we really want to push the survey, get as many, if we can get a couple of thousand responses on that survey, I mean, it would sing praises. So really looking forward to pushing that and pushing the information. Like I mentioned, we'll do pop-ups. We'll have a public meeting here at the end of the month, and then we'll have an additional workshop later on. And then as we move out of the visioning and understanding phase, as we go into the winter, we'll have more action plan committee meetings. And then we'll have follow-ups for those same stakeholders. We want to kind of hear what they say, digest some things, come back and say, this is what we heard. We think this is what you were saying. Let's make sure we kind of keep in touch and keep pace with everything. With that, I will hand it back over to Mitch and answer any questions.
I have a question. So with this action plan, obviously we're working with the city of Norfolk on the streets and stuff, but the FSI accents you're talking about, I assume a number of those are on 275 and 13th Street or Highway 81, which are both state highways. How's the state work with us when you have recommendations for that? Because traditionally, when we try to make recommendations on those sort of roads, we don't get much. I mean, you know, we've been I think on Benjamin and 13th Street, I think for years now, we've been talking about having a light coming in from north, if you're heading southbound or northbound, that you've got something there that indicates the light's gonna change. And, you know, never really get much back on that. So I wonder how that's gonna work moving forward.
Yeah, so we are certainly engaging them in this process. We have some specific meetings set up with the state, and I believe the state and the county are both on our action plan committee. So all we can do is try to coordinate, show them what the community says are the safety issues, show them the data says, show them what the recommended, proven safety countermeasures would be to address those safety concerns. But that's the process is to coordinate with them, to inform them about what the city wants, what the data shows, and hopefully lead to some progressive or some successful outcomes.
I would also throw in that, you know, the cities and the DOT's perspectives are starting to the gap's starting to close. The state put out, you know, their own study recently, and they're engaging in a couple of other studies that start to hit to the same characteristics as what, you know, the cities have been kind of saying for a long time. We need this, and we want more control over maybe some of the aspects of the road design. So it is coming together. It may seem slow, but it's working on it.
So there is a representative of NDOT on the action committee
Yes, Kevin
whose first meeting is tomorrow,
Kevin
right?
Damagala, he's the district engineer. He's going to be part of the action plan.
And I'm also a representative on the NDOT's Complete Streets Committee as well, so we have good representation there.
Okay. Other questions? So a very comprehensive introduction for us to this effort, so we appreciate that, and we appreciate the work involved in the volunteer hours that citizens on the action committee will put in. So you gave us a pretty good timeline of where this starts and then where you hope to end up. The goal here listed 2028. When do you move from the meeting and input phase to weighing implementable options and then going out to look for financing of those improvement options? How does that all work, and how does the timeline play out in that regard?
So after our analysis and our initial round of engagement wraps up this summer, then we'll move into identifying where they match up, where the data and what we hear from the public matches up, identify what those safety countermeasures, as well as the complete streets approach, where those policies should go, where the guidelines should go, and then also what are the opportunities for projects. So then that begins initial identification of what those are. We have continued conversations with our stakeholder groups and more targeted stakeholder engagement during that process to present and refine the draft recommendations. And then we also have recommendations workshop, not scheduled with you, but within our scope, to present those draft recommendations along with what we heard from the stakeholders, and so we can workshop those with you as well.
Are you anticipating that all being done by kind of late summer next year or summer this next year?
So that would probably be in the fall this year, because we'll be wrapped up by the spring of next year.
Okay. Given that, I think then there's the other grant opportunity through the Safe Streets for All's implementation grant. I believe then that closes in September.
It's always changing.
Yeah,
Okay.
this year there were 3 different timelines, so who knows what next year will look
But
like.
we're hoping that, we'll have all the information put together and we can apply then next year for that implementation grant.
So I assume you guys have worked in other communities on projects like this. Is there one concrete, tangible example of an improvement that's come out of this process that you'd like to highlight, or maybe you're at the beginning stages or mid stages of these projects?
Yeah, so the SS for A program is in its infancy, I should say, and so their projects are actually just starting to get funded because you had to have a safety action plan that met the requirements. But the proven safety countermeasures are on Federal Highway's website. There's 28 of them or so. They've all been proven to address specific safety concerns. So I don't have a specific example, but I can certainly provide you. It's like high visibility crosswalks, speed management, those sorts of things. Are considered their proven safety countermeasures that have an expectation on severe crash reduction.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks, Anna. Okay. All right. That wraps up our special presentation portion of the agenda. We will move into public hearings and related action and start with item 27. I will open this public hearing at the request of PR Leasing Company LLC to consider a zoning change from A Agricultural District to C3 Service Commercial District on property addressed as approximately quarter-mile east of 37th Street on Highway 275. And to open this public hearing, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner. Val.
Thank you. This is located, it doesn't have an address, obviously, since we didn't put that in the public hearing notice. It's a kind of a strange strip of land that is narrow north to south in between Green Line and Dinkle Implementations. PR Leasing is the company that also owns Green Line, so they own this strip of property. And so it is zoned ag right now. And you'll see the next item after the zone change is a plat that goes with it. And because it is too small to remain ag, we needed to, make it into an appropriate zoning. C3 is appropriate along 275. That is what Green Line already is also, so that it would match what they already have as their business. And then the remainder of that with the plat would stay ag, but then go with a piece of property that is south of Green Line. So that's kind of the plan for this. If this does not pass on all 3 readings, then we will need to pull the plat because we need to have that zone change approved before we can split that smaller lot off. And the applicant is here if you have any questions for them.
Thank you, Val. I'm assuming the area in question is generally part within our comprehensive plan, commercial district. Is that correct?
Correct,
Calls
yes.
for commercial.
Yep.
All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to may make comment now. Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I will ask for a planning commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 2nd, 2024 to consider a zoning change from A Agricultural District to C3 Service Commercial District on property approximately 1/4 mile east of 37th Street on Highway 275. Planning Commission recommends approval of the request with an 8-0 vote.
Okay, with that, I will close the hearing and move to item 28 and look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5889 for a zoning change from A to C3 zoning on property addressed as approximately 1/4 mile east of 37th Street on Highway 275.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5889 for a zoning change from agricultural to service commercial.
Motion second. Any discussion, comments on this, council? Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5889 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion, we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5889 on second and third.
Second that.
Motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5889 carries on second and third.
Item 29, we look for a motion to consider Resolution 2024-34 approving the final plat of PR Leasing Company LLC's addition.
I'll make a motion for consideration of resolution number 2024-34.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further comments or discussion on this? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution 2024-34 is adopted.
All right, that brings us to our regular agenda, item 30. I would entertain a motion to consider approval of an interlocal agreement between the City of Norfolk and Madison County to join together for the administration of public infrastructure projects, specifically police division renovation, expansion, and equipment, and street improvements.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second.
Motion and a second, and for some background on this and the process involved, Danny, our city attorney. Danny, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Nebraska statutes require that an incorporated municipality that proposes to increase a municipal sales and use tax to a rate greater than 1.5% must submit the question to voters. State law also requires that the city enter into an interlocal agreement and dedicate the additional revenue generated by the sales and use tax increase to a public infrastructure project as laid out in the statute. So this interlocal agreement that's before you tonight, it is between the City of Norfolk and Madison County, and the purpose is to increase by a half-cent sales tax to go up to 2% in order to fund the police division renovation, expansion, and equipment and street improvements. And this is very similar to the interlocal that was drafted in 2022, as well as the one that did the library. And the term in here, not to be confused with the term for the sales tax itself, but the term of the interlocal is for a term of 6 years. And that is to contemplate, it will be in effect when it's signed, assuming that the resolution moves forward. It kind of accounts for the fact that even if it does move forward in November, if the vote is yes, it takes time to implement the sales tax, and then as soon as it's done, it takes time to wind it down. So that 6 years contemplates that, although we are talking about the 4 years that we have talked about as council. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Danny.
So has Madison County approved this already, or will they follow our lead tonight?
They will follow tomorrow morning. We will go and speak with them, and they're looking at the same interlocal that we are looking at. I don't contemplate any changes at this point.
So, Danny, these local option sales tax infrastructure projects are required by state law to involve an interlocal agreement like this, correct?
Yes, when you're exceeding the 1.5 cent, which is what we're at now, 1.5%, when you go up to the 2%, you have to have the interlocal with another political subdivision. And because of the relationship between the city and the county, the reciprocal agreement with law enforcement,
Right.
It made sense here, and they were open to the same.
And that's the point I wanted to get to because of some of the interaction between county and city law enforcement regarding police station and the impacts of a new station that seemed to make sense for this,
Correct.
for
Yes.
the county to be the other public agency involved here. Any other questions or comments on this? Discussion? Okay. If not, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 31, we would look for a motion to consider Resolution 2024-35, submitting to the registered voters of the City of Norfolk at the general election to be held November 5th, 2024, the question of authorizing the collection of an additional 0.5% sales and use tax to be used for the public infrastructure project of Police Division renovation, expansion, and equipment, with residual revenue to be used for street improvements.
I'll offer for consideration Resolution 2024-35.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a couple seconds. Danny Myers-Noley, once again, our city attorney, give us some background on this process, please.
Yes, so now that the interlocal has moved forward, it's time to consider the resolution itself, and this is another legal obligation under state law. This actually sets forth the language that the city clerk will then forward to the county clerk for inclusion on the November 5th ballot. It talks about the fact that it will be we contemplate a 4-year sales tax, no more than that. The focus is on the police division renovation and expansion together with equipment, and then the remainder will go towards, any residual will go towards street improvements. And in order to move this forward, we have to have a vote of, we have to have 7 affirmative votes, and that can include the mayor as well.
And Danny, this proposal includes a sunset, right? A timeline for which the sales tax would be collected and then expires.
It's 48 months is what is contemplated within this resolution, as well as the accompanying interlocal.
Great, thank you. Any questions, council, or discussion on this? If not, I'll just note, a refresher on the process. Going months back now, a committee of Norfolk citizens was called together to weigh options specifically on exploring how to fund and finance police station expansion, renovation, as well as street improvements. And some of the members of that committee are in the audience here tonight. I once again appreciate your time and energy involved in that process. Hours spent together and with city staff exploring the police station, visiting the police station, learning more about our city streets and their needs, and then weighing options on how to make these improvements. And coming to the conclusion that sometimes we have to make hard decisions to pay for what we need, and this proposal seemed to be the most fair in that everyone shares in the interest of excellent public safety services, and everyone pays a little bit, including visitors to Norfolk, to do that. So again, I commend the committee's work on this, and think this is a good plan, a solid plan going forward to get this necessary work done. Anyone wishing to comment on this, either council or the public? Okay, if not, and I will say, I think statute requires a supermajority of vote on this, which would be 7 members of the council. No pressure.
I would like to interject one thing about it. With what that special committee did, that action committee put together, one thing that they did take into great consideration was the fact of the bonded debt for streets, and the fact that if the way this is set up and the way taxes will be collected, in order to start this project sooner, the city will have to front end a portion of that construction, which puts a lot of skin in the game for the city also, not only just the taxpayer. And with front ending that, and then the revenue stream comes in, the tune of, in 4 years, probably about $4 million a year. I think they're anticipating about $16 million overall. We'll be able to start some of our road projects with some of those incoming funds by front ending some of those road projects also. And then the key thing I think that they wanted to make us accountable for, the use of chaff dollars and the fact that without bonding the 5 million in roads, not saying that can't happen if that is something that's needed, but if it does not happen, that would leave a $480,000 payment towards that debt reduction on that bond, and that'll help us keep that in the chaff fund without creating our bond, adding more bonded debt to those funds that come out of that for our roads, which will allow, I think, for some good road maintenance moving forward and keeping our bonded debt down that's liable and paid for through the chaff tax. So just wanted to put that out there. I think that was one of their, one of the responsibilities they had, and they came up with a plan to do that. So that's, in my opinion, thoughtfulness and good thinking for future use of those funds.
Good comments, Councilman, and good to note all of that. And there was, like, with a lot of deals, there's compromise and give and take. And others, because last year we saw the need for advanced street work and we're ready to move more aggressively toward that. But then with intersection of this effort, police station coming in first, we had to compromise a little bit in advancing some of that work. But as you said, I think this proposal still lies forward the opportunity to do both, maybe a little slower timeline, but get there and prioritize most urgent needs accordingly. So, any other comments or questions?
I think it'd be, just as a reminder, no elected body was on that committee. This was made up of our citizens directing the elected body which direction they felt we should move forward. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that was driven, that was community driven, not council driven.
Yeah. After a process of looking at, needs and available options. So, yep, good point. Any other comments or questions?
Hello, Council. I'm Pastor Ty. Just want to mention something that I learned in this process. I think it's something good for all of us. In dealing with this and talking with people in our community, I think all of us can use improvement on listening. I was talking with Steve about how it would be nice to have more road information that we got during the meeting. And then Steve explained to me all the times and availabilities that they would explain the road processes. And it's very easy for you as elected officials and those who work for the city to take the brunt of our community's frustration. And I just want to use this opportunity to say that we could all be better listeners, that part of being a healthy community is we as citizens need to take the time to read the minutes, to go through the stuff so that way we're well informed and to know what kind of questions to ask. So I think one thing, we have a great, amazing city. I'm glad I live in Nebraska and not Iowa. But I think it would be really good for us to continue to improve as a committee, to be better listeners, and as citizens for us to avail ourselves of opportunities when you do try to communicate. So that's something I learned in this process. We're answering a lot of people's questions. I said these are answered, here's where they're answered, and I hear a lot of, oh. So I thank you for the opportunity to serve you all and to serve our great community, and I hope we continue to become a better city.
Thank you, Pastor Ty. Thank you for your service on that committee and the comprehensive approach that you all took to a complicated situation. So, anyone else? Any further comment? Okay. If not, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2024-35 is adopted.
Okay, that brings us to item 32. I would look for a motion to consider Resolution 2024-36, authorizing submittal of a joint application with the Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association for state assistance to finance a privately owned sports complex economic development project with a portion of the state sales tax received on transactions within 600 yards of the new sports complex.
I'll offer for consideration of Resolution 2024-36.
Second.
Motion and a second, and for some background on this, we'll hear from Candace Alder, Economic Developer.
All
right, so before you tonight is a resolution, and this resolution authorizes the city to submit a joint application to the Nebraska Department of Revenue for consideration of a new sports complex to be paid for in part with state sales tax generated from any new development that locates within 600 yards of the facility. So the proposed facility would be owned by the Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association, which is a nonprofit organization. And if approved, the draft application found in your agenda packets will be submitted to the Nebraska Department of Revenue and the Sports Arena Facility Financing Assistance Board for review. If the application is given approval by that board, you'll see a second resolution come back to you in late August with a request to put language on the ballot for the November general election. And if that moves forward and the voters approve the contemplated project, the city will then issue revenue bonds for the project. Then as state sales tax, again I'm saying state sales tax, is generated from new development within 600 yards of the proposed facility, the state of Nebraska will turn back 70% of their portion of the state sales tax collected to the city, who will then provide the funds to the debt holder. So I'm kind of standing in for Randy Gates here. When I discussed this with Randy, he wanted the council to be assured that any risk associated with the revenue bonds would be on the bondholder, not the city of Norfolk. And we have representatives from the Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association, including Mitchell Schultze and his consultant Jeff Wheat, who can answer any questions you have related to the application before you. And then we've also asked Tyler Mullen with Baird Holm Law Firm. He's back here. Tyler specializes in public finance transactions and has been consulting with Randy and the team here at the city on the project. So Tyler drafted the resolution that's before you, and he can assist with any questions related to the resolution or the process that we will follow if the citizens of Norfolk approve the proposed project. So that in a nutshell is what we're looking at. I would take any questions, or I would certainly defer to Mitchell. He's worked very hard on this project, and they're the team that really brought it forward to us. So,
Candace, maybe before we get into questions about the meat of the project, the process involved. So this is really a first step. What's before us tonight is really a first step in this. Discussion of this project was held publicly about a month ago, I think, at this point,
yep,
in this council chambers. So there has been an introduction of it, but there's a process, and I don't know whether it's Mitch or Tyler or you want to go into that, but I think that's helpful to know before we start talking about all the details.
sure. The process from
The process
here
of this
on out?
application first going to a state board, right, that's
Yeah.
within the Department of Revenue, and then I think essentially coming back for us to potentially authorize going onto the ballot in November.
Yeah, so the state board consists of Governor Pillen, the state treasurer, the Nebraska Investment Council, Nebraska Board of Public Accountancy, and a professor of economics. So they will review the application before them, and then they make the determination on whether or not it's approved and comes back for consideration. And then when you guys hear that feedback from the state of Nebraska, that's when we will present to you proposed ballot language that we would ask you to put on the ballot prior to the general election. Now that ballot language is due September 3rd. And so we are on a tight timeline, but we do think that they have put together a great project. So we're hoping that we can move this forward to the general election. If for some reason that state agency doesn't approve the application quite yet, we would have to potentially be looking at a special election.
Okay. Thank you.
Candace, I do have a question for you, just for clarification for everyone. Why does the city of Norfolk need to be a co-applicant on this?
So on this one, Jeff,
Jeff, we'd have to have you come forward. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Week. I'm with MJ Consulting. I helped draft legislation when it was passed as LB 39 in May of 2021. The co-applicant language is so that a political subdivision can issue the revenue bonds and be void of obligation. So I think it's IRS 1023 language where the political subdivision, City of Norfolk, becomes conduit issuer only. That allows you to do it without risk.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Are you gonna correct me?
No. Tyler Mullen, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street in Omaha. Jeff did a great job, Candace did an amazing job summarizing the project and the process. The one thing I would add is the reason that the city has to be a joint applicant is because the new language that Jeff was referring to, that for privately owned complexes to get the state assistance, the city and the nonprofit have to be joint applicants. It's a requirement for that state assistance to flow through to help finance the project for a privately owned sports complex.
Thanks for that clarification.
And Tyler, that's a fairly new development within state law allowing this to happen, that kind of partnership to happen this way, correct?
It actually becomes, that just got passed
Brand
this
new.
year, and it's brand new, and everyone's still kind of working their way through it, so,
It's law, July 19th is when it actually becomes law.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One quick thing too, I do think it's important that we mention that within the 600-yard radius, if you're an existing building or business within that radius, you're exempt. It's all new business that is brought in to help fund the project. And also, I think it's important to note that tonight, by recommending move forward, they still have to go in front of the SFFA board and make sure that it looks feasible and economically sound to move forward from that. So there are going to be eyes on this, making sure that, and the fact that the revenue bonds are issued from the city are not held by the city. They'll be held by investors who will be taking on the most risk. So they're probably more of a high yield bond or high interest bond with a decent cover factor.
That would be reasonable to me. yeah.
Right. So then that's where your risk will be held moving forward. So I think, and also make sure that we do note that it's 70% of state sales tax that will finance that. And then those funds will then be given or sent to the city, right? I'm sure that's part of the partnership too.
Yep.
They come to the city, then the city then releases those funds to pay the pay the payment on the bonds.
It actually goes into a separate account, can't even be commingled with other city funds.
Right.
And from there, one of the things you can use the money on is to repay debt issued to finance the project, which is what everyone's anticipating.
But I guess that's part of the partnership.
Yep.
In
Right.
whole, yeah.
And to complete your point on that, the city sales tax portion from the new development stays with the city.
Yeah.
It's not,
And one thing to note too, in order to generate the funds to fund this project by going out and recruiting the businesses to come in to help fund that state sales tax, that'll generate the city I'm just going off the math from what you guys are proposing, it's 193,000 in additional sales tax will come into the city because of this development. And that's only basing on the fact of what they have to collect to fund the bonds, and that while they're generating state sales tax, the city sales tax portion will still be paid back to the city, and that's in the tune of I think that's about what the amount would be,
So, yeah, I think there's a couple prongs here in terms of state policy intent, which is to meet a demonstrated need within communities for these youth sports complexes, but also to be a catalyst for new economic development. And I think staff recognized that right away and started to characterize such an effort as an economic development initiative in the community, which I think is right. So, all right. Any other questions while we have legal counsel up here?
So, once we clear the hurdles and the community say votes for it, then what's the next step? So the green lights are all given, then what's the next step? What's the time frame look like after that?
Do you want to talk about the timeline? Yeah.
Now I'm going to correct him. I think what happens at that point, if we get a positive vote from the vote of the people, I think at that point, we work with our bond issuer, whoever the city, usually is it D.A. Davidson, who's the city used for bonding. But there is an underwriting process. So part of what we are currently working with, our development partner, Paul, is here. Hi, Paul. We have, we're trying to make sure that our letters of interest, our commitments from retailers meet the criteria for the Department of Revenue. So we do kind of sail through. So we know ahead of time, actually the answers to questions that bond underwriters will ask. So we can issue bonds right away. That would be the goal.
So do you have to have all your letters of intent in place before your meeting with the SFFA?
We're gonna have as many of those ready to go. The Department of Revenue has a process. They did this with Kearney when they applied. They had a GO bond, so it's a little different, but their process went pretty quickly, but they did have things that weren't complete in their application before they submitted. So they worked with the project manager at the Department of Revenue to kind of put the package together in a way that would meet the criteria. And then once it got in front of the board approved it right away.
Okay.
So those LOIs are theoretically included within your application to the Department
Yeah, they
of
have
Revenue.
to be.
They have to be.
So,
Yeah.
so when it comes back to council in what we say, late August, right? Then when it comes back to council in late August to ask to be put on the general ballot, at that point in time, you'll have a majority of those.
That's what I'm.
The only reason I ask is you want to put some on the ballot and then the funding's not there to.
Yeah. No, I know.
Present itself
I know.
to finance the bonding that you need to move forward.
One item of clarification, the item, like, we wouldn't be back to you in late August unless there's approval from the board.
Right,
So-
I knew that, yeah, I knew
So
that.
if the board will want to see the LOIs before
Yeah.
they give approval, we won't be back until we get approval. So we should have all the LOIs and whatnot, at that meeting.
Yeah, I think essentially what we're trying to get at is the fact that this is gonna be highly scrutinized by the SFFA.
Well, and thank
prior
goodness.
to coming back to the council.
Yeah, we want it to
Right,
be. We don't
right.
want a project that looks good on paper, but
Right.
we can't get it done.
Yeah.
We want to have those questions already answered.
Okay.
So, and we're working diligently to get that done.
Okay.
We're, our team that has land around where we're going to develop.
Right.
So,
Okay.
For public record, I know, again, this was introduced at a public meeting about a month ago, but I think for tonight's purposes and media's here, what Mitch or Jeff, just talk, in a nutshell, talk about what the project is and what it would bring to
why
the
don't you
community.
come up, because I think it's important. I think you need to talk about the D-League component and the need, the local need, but also we have economic impact numbers and visits that would come to this district. I mean, if Mitchell and their group, you just held a tournament, go ahead and, I mean, maybe that's what you need to start with.
Well, how much time do we have? I'm joking.
Let's say 3 minutes, how about that?
That's great.
Maybe up to 5, how about?
No, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, three's good, no. Yeah, I guess for those, I think for the most part, council was all here at the work session, but we've had a basketball program, volleyball program for about a decade now that impacts, we've got about 550 kids in our program total. In Norfolk, this is basketball numbers. In Norfolk, there's about 300 kids total. And so we currently practice at the YMCA, but we're just on top of each other, and we do take a lot of the YMCA's time. We do, one of the numbers that I would like to note is of the 300 roughly kids in our Norfolk program, 80% of those come from outside of the city of Norfolk, and it's probably actually more than that, but I'll just use rough numbers. So this is a city of Norfolk economic development project, but it's truly a Northeast Nebraska impact. And when we talk about impact, we're talking about impacting the youth and how we can help develop them as athletes, help them create relationships, and truly just be a positive impact on their life. So the economic impact, Jeff, maybe you can hit a little bit on that, but we did host our first tournament as a program 3 weeks ago, I think, at the end of June there. Big Bang Boom. So Tracy Jeffrey of the Visitors Bureau ran some numbers. The total sales, right, was 1.1 million from during the weekend from the people that we brought in. So I guess you can all do the math on what that brought to the city and so forth. But we had about 120 teams roughly, and I know already next year we can grow that. And
How many courts did you use?
we used 10 courts. We used Lutheran High, the YMCA, Norfolk High, and then actually Madison. So those were the courts that available for us to use. And so we could probably keep 12 busy or even maybe 14, but this would be, our goal would be to host several of these throughout the year, and also volleyball and leagues. So from an economic impact perspective to the city, there's a huge opportunity here in my opinion. So do you want to talk about the visits?
Yeah, the visits, and it's in the application, so if you all got a copy of that draft application, part of the project summary talks about economic impacts, it talks about hotel room night stays, new hotel room night stays. I mean, it's somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 new hotel room night stays with the complex being built. And it's evidence based on their tournament that they just hosted, it kind of makes the case. Also, non-unique visits to this location roughly gets up to almost 700,000 non-unique visits. If you look at the project, you'll see that we have an indoor component, and then phase 2 is an outdoor, what we're calling a super pad, that's adaptable to soccer and baseball and softball. So those things, indoor and outdoor, we're gonna be active 50 weeks out of the year. I mean, Christmas and 4th, probably not, but, well, maybe. But it really is going to be a destination for this location. We have a hotel developer that we're waiting on an LOI. So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening, and I think we're confident that we're ready to go to the state and start the process of getting conditionally approved so that we can do a vote of the people.
Okay, well, thank you, that's helpful background. And this, phase 1, the indoor component would be an 8-court basketball facility, right? Convertible to 6 volleyball courts?
Other way around, six
Other way.
basketball,
Okay.
8
Gotcha.
to 10 volleyball.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Mitchell, who would have access to this facility?
We will have members that'll have access to it. Obviously, the kids that play in our program. We want to make this an affordable. If you read the law, this is for competitive sports, which I believe we would fall under, both our volleyball and our basketball program. But really, I think we'd like to make it available to anybody that has interest in using it. Like I said, we will offer a membership, kind of on a day-to-day basis. Right now, we're super busy in the summer that we could keep it busy probably every day. But yeah, I mean, and again, Northeast Nebraska needs this. We've got families from Atkinson to South Sioux, from Yankton to Columbus, and everywhere in between that have kids that come and play for our program. Because it's a good opportunity for them. It's an affordable opportunity. They don't have to drive to Lincoln or Omaha or Sioux Falls to play. I think access will be very opportunistic for that part of it.
When you ask about the public, you're not gonna start doing pickleball, right? I mean, D-League's not gonna do pickleball.
D-League, no, but
Okay, but
Tim
during the
Bittner
day, that's the normal thing that a hardcourt facility like this would be utilized for pickleball, which we would have need in the community for that. So, as an option. And that's built into the feasibility as well.
I guess just for basic terminology, this is basically called the Turnback Sales Tax Program, correct? I
It
mean,
is,
just to-
yeah.
So when we're discussing it, when people are asking us, that's the terminology.
Yeah, and
This
it's no
State.
local option.
State
Sales.
sales, yes.
Yeah, just state sales tax.
State
On
turnback
new-
sales tax.
Yeah, just new retailers coming within the district.
Right.
Like to have existing, but we don't get existing.
Right.
Okay, thank you. As a parent of a 13-year-old who is in a basketball league like this, I can attest to how much money is spent at these locations. And I think another big benefit to this is the local families not, like you said, having to drive 2, 4, or 6 hours on a weekend to play a few games. It's a huge benefit in itself, outside of all the new potential business development that comes with it. Any other questions or comments on what's before us? The submittal of a application to the state board that will review this. Okay. If not, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2024-36 is adopted.
Item 33 would look for a motion to consider approval to purchase a prefabricated restroom from CXT for Liberty Bell Park off of Sourcewell contract number 081721 for the amount of $122,933.
I'll offer for consideration. Second.
Motion and second. For background on this, Nate Powell, our city Parks and Recreation Director. Nate.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you is the contract with CXT in the amount of $122,933 for a restroom facility at Liberty Bell Park. The need came when we took the pool out and did the demo there. There was some restrooms there, and this is replacing that. And so there are funds set aside for this as part of our CIP using Keno dollars. And the budget amount is $200,000. The difference will be used to bring utilities and also prep the site as well. There's about a 150-day lead time on delivery, and this will be a year-round restroom facility. And so staff recommends approval of the Sourcewell contract with CXT in the amount of $122,930.
And currently, there is not a permanent restroom facility at this park, correct?
That's correct. We're using portables. Yep.
And you mentioned this being in the CIP, so this has been anticipated for Liberty Bell for some time. Okay. All right. Thank you, Nate. Any questions?
Nate, the last time you presented this, I had asked you if there was any options for a storm shelter inside that restroom. Did you look into that?
I did look into that. I have that here. They don't call it a storm shelter, but they're more of a hardened shelter. I'm gonna get to it here in a second. I'll give you my recollection if it didn't make it in here with me today, because I don't see it in here. The roofing is 400 pounds per square foot, so it's a hardened shelter is what they call those. They're built pretty stout. They could withstand quite a bit of abuse. So they're not your typical structures, but that's the answer that they gave me.
So we don't have a second option?
There is no other option, no. Not for a prefab.
Is there a reason we went with prefab instead of a standard construction?
Nothing specific other than not having to design a facility. It saves on costs there because, you know, the design process is a little bit that we have to get into.
That was my follow-up. Do you feel this
Yeah.
is more cost-effective compared to?
Historically, I don't know that it would be, you know, much savings, but it probably close to the same is what I would anticipate.
I think you could probably look back at what we spent at the skate park for those restrooms.
So it was the same process, correct? So
Yeah.
the skate park was prefabricated.
Yep.
I thought initially those were put in because the cost savings was quite a bit greater.
I
than
think the main
overall
cost savings
construction.
is the design. I think the cost of the facility is gonna be the same, but then you have your
The
design
savings.
costs on top of that.
Quick question, Corey asked the question I was gonna ask, so the other one I have is, will these be, obviously these will be ADA accessible?
That's
for
correct.
children and
Yep.
with wheelchair needs and stuff?
Yep.
So if the public was curious, that was the follow-up there too, was if the public is curious, the one that we have at the skate park's very similar to this one?
That's correct.
Right.
Same company.
And I think that was like 170,000 for that one. This is a little bit bigger, correct?
This is a two-stall, should be roughly the same size. You're probably including all the site prep as well, so there's
think so.
additional costs on top of this for that.
Okay.
And the budget is around 200.
You didn't just find a change order, did that?
No. Deduct.
When will this be done, Nate?
Hopefully this fall, that's the goal, it's 150 days, so we're close to getting that done before winter. We'll have the site prepped, ready to go, even if it gets delivered in the winter.
I also think it's important to note there are Keno funds that are financing this project.
That's correct.
So that's what those funds were sent for too, so.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thanks, Nate.
Thanks.
Public comment on this? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 34 would look for a motion to consider approval to advertise for bids for the installation of pickleball courts and sidewalk areas in Liberty Bell Park.
I'll make a motion for consideration.
Motion and second. Nate, once again.
Okay, yep, this is for the pickleball courts and sidewalk inside Liberty Bell Park. This will be ADA access to the amenities within the park. This is a donation from Mike Wingate, Tom Sheath, and Brian Adams in the amount of $300,000. If you have any questions specific to that, this is to start the bid process.
I guess the only question, I think we had this before, is it gonna be lit up at night?
Yes, we are planning on lighting that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? Another opportunity to thank the Wingates and for this donation to make this all possible. So, all right. Any other questions or comments or public comment on this? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 35, we'll look for a motion to consider approval to advertise for bids for the nature playground and irrigation at Johnson Park.
Second.
Motion second. Nate, one more time.
Okay, this is our final bid package for Johnson Park. We had 5 bid packages that we split up for a
Can you
save.
repeat what you just said there?
Yeah, we use, for the
What's
record.
You said there's a final?
This is the
Final
final,
bid
yes,
pack-
final.
The closing chapter.
Yes. Bid package 1 was the fountain and ice. Bid package 2 was the grading and trails. 3 was the structures. And 4 is electrical. And this one will be our nature playground and also the irrigation. Both are being funded through the ARPA grant dollars. We'll have a good breakdown once we receive the final bid for you when we bring that forward. the budgeted amount is around 435,000 is what we're thinking, but we'll see where that goes with bids. So staff recommends to advertise for bids for the nature playground and irrigation using the ARPA grant funds.
When does the bid period close for this, Nate?
So it'll close August 9th. It'll
Okay.
be on the second meeting in August.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on this? Public comment? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 36 would look for a motion to consider approval of change order number 1F with Rutgens Construction Incorporated for the sanitary sewer replacement Monroe Avenue to Logan Street project, resulting in a net decrease of $266,040.97.
I'll offer for consideration approval of change order number 1F.
Second.
Motion second. And for some background on this, Chad Roberts, our Water Systems Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What we got in front of you is the change order for the project there on Monroe Avenue. A little history on this one here. On May 1st of 2023, we had a contract with Rutgens Associates or Construction for $1,985,515. And again, this is for that sewer replacement down there from Monroe Avenue over to Logan. We got the project done under bid. The change order here is a reflection of that. The final contract amount that we're looking at is $1,719,473.03. What were the savings on this project? We changed the method. There was a method on there for doing a jack and bore construction there along 4th Street. We went ahead and did an open cut on that one there. That saved us $175,000. Also doing that one, we didn't have to do the stabilization, the trench stabilization on the project for that area. Again, that was a $32,800 savings there. Staff reviewed the location of a couple manholes. We were able to remove 2 manholes on there, saving an additional $20,000. And then the rest of the money, approximately about $38,000, was for the final quantity changes on the project. So again, staff has recommended the approval of the change order in the amount of a reduction in the amount of $266,000. Any questions?
I guess when you had your initial engineering done and they recommended the earlier process that you deviated from, explain that to us how,
Yeah, so when we were looking down there on 4th Street, we were trying to see what would be the least restrictions down there, taking away some of the congestion and items of that sort. So that's why we were looking at the jack and bore installation to start with. The street down there is probably what was leading us to that open cut. Concrete down there was a little broken up on the street and items of that sort. And then we were able to go back and review some of the distances of the water mains and the sewer mains, and we were able to meet the separation that was needed for the open cut. So that's the reason why we went ahead and went with the open cut installation.
That was going to be my question. So we always, of course, love to hear about savings on these projects, but you're confident that going this alternative route is not compromising the integrity of the work?
Absolutely not.
In fact, maybe enhancing it?
Yeah.
Very good.
I think, we got 2 things out of there. We got the sewer installed, and we also improved some of the street quality down there on the concrete, so.
Very good.
When I first saw net decrease.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I first saw net decrease in the agenda packet for $266K. I thought it was a typo, so.
Well, that was one of the things that we said when we got this contract
Yeah.
awarded is, staff looks at all this, as we put the construction project
Yeah, well
building. And we're always looking for the best thing that we can do to save the money.
That's good.
What then, Chad, does that do for your overall budget? Is that saving, that money that's then saved, how does that get accounted for or factored in within your?
It goes back towards the, probably the bond payment, a little bit on that, and then also for future projects. We keep it within the sewer budget.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
And I will say, I drive by that every day, that would have been a big slam dunk if we wouldn't have had the wet weather.
Right.
That they had the delays, they probably would have been done 3 weeks earlier, but
Yeah, they
overall,
were-
I think it was a good project and it cleaned up a lot of that street.
Yeah, and then the one other item on that whole project is, that sewer going in towards the the wastewater treatment plant, and we upsized that. So we've got the growth for the future also with that installation of that sewer.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Or public comment? All right. Thank you, Chad.
Yep, thank you.
Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 37, we'll look for a motion to consider approval of an interlocal agreement between Madison County and the City of Norfolk for asphaltic concrete paving projects on Eisenhower Avenue west of 25th Street and 45th Street south of Omaha Avenue.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Motion second. For some background on this, Steve Ramus, our Public Works Director.
Mayor and council, earlier this spring, I was approached by the county as a function of their mill and overlay project for this year. Two items came up during that conversation. One was Eisenhower. As you go west of 25th Street, most of that is the county's. There is a section in there of about 350 feet or so where the part of the Dover development connects in. So that would be the portion here. It doesn't make any sense that they pick up their milling and overlay machine and leave a section there in its aged configuration. So this would allow them to mill through that. They would re-overlay that, and for that portion there, be about $24,360 in construction, plus a portion of the engineering. The other conversation that came up was that 45th Street south of Omaha Avenue. There's about 1,600 feet in there that's got a lot of shoving going on, and milling that 1,600 feet out and restabilizing that section of pavement. That portion would be $87,376. So those were the two pieces that had some proximity to the county that we felt would be advantageous for us to include through an interlocal agreement.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Comments or discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Last but not least, item 38, we'll look for a motion to consider approval of an engineering design contract with McLaury Engineering for the 25th Street reconstruction to Benjamin Avenue to Eisenhower Avenue project for an amount of $325,000.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Motion and a second, and Steve, once again, some background on this, please.
Mayor and council, this would be an engineering services agreement for preliminary and final design for 25th Street going north of Benjamin Avenue and extending potentially all the way up to Eisenhower Avenue. The project, we anticipate to have some public engagement with homeowners in that corridor through public meetings. The project also is anticipated to look at and consider exactly what to do with the existing pavement. So there'll be a conversation that we'll make public and take public comment on in terms of phasing that. Just a potential example would be either rubblization or crack and seeding the existing concrete surface, and then building in shoulders, doing asphalt shoulders, asphalt overlay. So that would be one option. Another option would just be doing the three lanes of a concrete street with curb and gutter, very similar to 25th Street south of Benjamin Avenue, and extending that basic corridor at least up to Sheridan, maybe going north of Sheridan. That might squeeze down as we go down and over a large drainage feature. Or in theory, we could take that all the way to Eisenhower. But it'd be we want to make that a public conversation, a citizen conversation with homeowners up in that area. as well as just a general public conversation. This contract does include a drainage study, as well as a geotechnical study to look at that, the existing pavement and underlying sub-base conditions. The project started, well, it started just as a function of the deterioration here about 2 to 3 years ago. And then we received some public input through our 1 and 6 year program on the unsafe conditions from a public walking perspective. The sidewalk on the southern end of this segment is on the west side, and it's very close to the edge of the street. So with some public comment coming in, just as well as the deterioration, we wanted to, we put this project on our 1 and 6 year program, as well as our 10-year capital improvement program. We wanted to get it moving sooner than now, but we've just been tied up with other projects, and right now we're ready to move this forward. Some of the concepts that would be presented in terms of options for that are also included in here. Again, it could be the 3-lane configuration all the way from 25th to Eisenhower. It could be a combination of 3-lane and 2-lane with intersection improvements. But again, those would all be taken to the public for conversation, brought back to subcommittees for final determination. So I would expect preliminary design this fall, final design probably next spring, summer to finalize that. And we would then budget based on the engineer's estimate at that time for construction and anticipate to move the project forward. There is some potential conversation to phase that in different phases to get, maybe we get the drainage in, get the trail and sidewalk in, and then come back and do the pavement, or we just bite the bullet and do it all at once. So again, those are conversations that we would engage the community and the elected officials with during the design phase.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions on that?
Steve, I have a question. So earlier we heard from tool design on the safe roads and complete streets. How would you integrate them into this project?
Complete streets, safe streets for all starts with public engagement, just to find out what the concerns of the public that's using that corridor are. Again, looking at the any crash information that would be available to us up in that area. So kind of looking at the data first to help drive decisions. Second then would be looking at design characteristics. So the 3-lane versus some other option is part of that. Presenting those to the public for consumption and feedback. We do have a trail system, so we anticipate the city's trail system would extend up the west side, up to Sheridan and connect into the trail system at Sheridan. One example of complete streets would be a conversation on, do we consider just the trail on the west side and abandon the sidewalk on the east side? Is that a safer condition and we'll consume that throughout the design process? Or do we put, like our standard design, the 8-foot trail on the west side and the 5-foot, general 5-foot sidewalk on the east side? Pavement markings, we would look at our, right now we have a 31-foot minimum, is kind of our standard roadway width. If we have 3 lanes in there, 3 lanes typically would be 10 feet plus our curb and gutter on either side gets us to that 31 feet. I think looking at the crash information, more current standard designs in terms of a 3-lane width, and just how we stripe the intersections. Do we include some sort of pedestrian crossing beacon at those intersections? I wouldn't anticipate them being signalized, but those are the things we do. And again, it starts largely with engaging the consumer, the users of that corridor in that conversation up front.
I guess, yeah, and I appreciate that answer, but I guess what I'm wondering is you get $325,000 for consideration of this, and yet they're gonna give us a design, and then we potentially have Safe Streets coming out there giving us a design. I mean, are we duplicating the design process?
No, the Safe Streets project is going to come back and suggest policy changes. It's going to suggest standards, changes our standard details, our standard lane widths. It's going to suggest, as part of those details, it's going to suggest maybe how we stripe our roads, how we stripe crossings, how we sign crossings. So it's not going to be the design that we work on, and most of our designs today include it. Complete Streets partially is looking at how do we repair or modify existing infrastructure. It is going to recommend policies and changes to our design process, but I would say our design processes today are really looking at all of that stuff for newer streets. We're using current NDOT policy or design standards. We look at the DOT to lead us in terms of the standard details, the geometrics. So I don't see any duplication of effort there between those two. They're different services. They're going to be providing different products for us to consume.
Thank you.
Yes, my question would be, I understand the need to look into the 25th Street between Pigeon Avenue and Eisenhower. The question I have is the current right-of-way, what we have for a current right-of-way, then what does that entail with, acquisition of ground if you do a turn, I mean, are we
So
getting
we've
in?
we've looked at the corridor from a preliminary perspective. We do not foresee any permanent right-of-way acquisition. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I think we have 73 feet of right-of-way through that corridor, so it's wider than our typical corridors already.
Other question would be, you said it was 1 in 6 year program for this particular project?
Right, so right now we have designs, we have the design phase we have the design phase, and then once we've got the design, say as we go through next year's budget cycle, we would update the construction numbers, and potentially could bid this out. I wouldn't see us bidding this out till fall.
And then you're
of next
thinking,
year.
you've had this in the CIP, how kicked down how far out are we looking for those funds? And if is this from CHAP?
Yes, this would be constructed and designed with CHAF funds. I don't have
The 325 is coming out of the CHAP budget.
325 comes out of CHAF,
Right,
yes.
right. I'm
Yeah.
talking long-term CHAP, but how many lineal feet do we have between
That's a mile,
mile?
5,280 feet.
This will be a major project. Major.
It will be. And again, initially, when we put this together, we looked at this as a phased project where we would get the drainage improvements in, get the trail in and the sidewalk in, stabilize the street, maybe come in and do some sort of a rubblization or crack and seat, add shoulders, and then do an asphalt overlay on that. And I still think that is desirable to look at that because there's some valuable resource there. And then if we did that, that would kick the full reconstruction of the pavement section down the road, probably 20, 25 years. But I think through the process, again, we'll bring back and say, we can go at about 50% design-ish. We'll say, okay, because we have to design the full corridor, and then we'll make a decision on how we're going to deal with the surfacing. So at about 50% design, we'll have a conversation on how we want to move forward with the paving portion of the project. Is it crack and seat with the mill and overlay and shoulder improvements? Or do we go ahead and pull the trigger on, 3 lanes of concrete with, mimicking the 25th Street to the south, or do we want to do something different? in there.
I kind of open up a can of worms though, because you're fixing up 25th to Eisenhower, but then you've got Benjamin going into that roundabout there, and that the traffic at that roundabout right now is backed up tremendously. So is that where we need, now you're gonna be
You know,
open up,
it's-
where you're like, now we've got to fix the roundabout?
You know,
'Cause I think I've heard that roundabout may
certainly,
quite possibly
we'll
not be
probably look, this project was not intended to really look at the intersection of Benjamin Avenue and 25th. We will, you know, if there's a desire to look at traffic in there, I don't know when that was put in, it's not that old, but.
I think the people coming down Eisenhower in the morning and coming down Benjamin to that
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
It certainly probably deserves a traffic study or traffic count, so we can get counts and understand, you know, how much traffic's coming through from the north,
Sure.
south, east, and west.
Well, that
and
brings up
what
another
that-
question too then. So as you're looking at roads, especially major projects on roads like this would anticipate could be, are we doing traffic studies to see that, you know, this is a major arterial road that needs, you know?
We look at traffic volume information. The DOT provides, they do traffic counts about every 4 to 5 years. I mean, obviously, those change over time, but they don't change that significant that, you know, we can't look at a segment and decide whether that's a major arterial, minor arterial, major collector, minor collector. 25th Street itself is a collector. It's not an arterial.
I
It's
guess
probably
just.
a major collector.
I guess just sitting out there looking at, you just look at that road and you think, there's no curb and gutter now, there's no, I mean.
Right. It's a fairly unsafe corridor certainly for pedestrians. And it's got some safety issues even for vehicles because there's no shoulder.
Accurate to say that segment is taking on more out-of-town commuter traffic than maybe anticipated when it was designed. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, the process here would be a very standard process. You know, we start with preliminary design. We have conversations about that. We move into final design. At about 90% design, maybe 75% design, then we would engage in a conversation of any temporary right-of-way need that we would need for construction purposes. I don't really see, this corridor has sidewalk on the west side for a majority of it. So I don't see a lot of profile change, but again, historically, we didn't have the right profiles in our streets, so I do see, I mean, this would be an opportunity to correct the profile, so we've got the right drainage on our streets. And so certainly we will do that. I would anticipate there would be some need for temporary easement for construction beyond the right-of-way, but currently I do not anticipate any permanent right-of-way takes along there.
One last question. How long ago was this one recommended into the CIP budget for the 1 in 10 year, 1 in 20 year? And if so, did this get a fast track of some sort?
It did as a function of, you know, just the general deterioration, but more so I would say it was the pedestrian safety within the corridor that brought this more to the front. I believe, I'd have to go back and look to be 100% sure. I think last year was the second year that it was in our 1 in 10 year capital improvement program. And when we put it in the capital improvement program, it kind of came into that, it certainly was in that first 5 years of our program when we put it in there.
I guess that's probably the nature of the question. So it moved into the capital improvement program last year.
I think last
In
year
the
was
1 in 10.
I think last year was the second year it was in our capital.
That's
improvement
probably why
program.
it feels like it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
That's the last question I'll ask, because that's the ward I live in.
And my
so.
recollection was there was public comment that was brought in here to council about that two-year timeframe ago. And again, between those conversations on the public safety, the location of the sidewalk relative to the southbound lane, we had a conversation and we inserted into our 1 in 6 year program, you know, to go into design in fiscal year 24 for construction. I think construction's 26.
Yeah, that's.
Again, I'd have to look.
That's why I was asking about the right of way, because it seems like the sidewalk by Sheridan, Dover seemed fairly close to the road.
Because I have filled the calls on that before, not feeling safe walking down there.
The west side of that corridor is wider than the east side of that corridor. Why, I still don't necessarily understand why. It's just, if that, I don't know if that's a,
Probably just the nature of the developments on these sides.
yeah.
I mean, the east side of that road was being built in the seventies. Well, that was a '70s subdivision. And then across the road, that started out in the '90s.
You're right, that's 73 feet, and the roundabout went in 2005.
No, we remember that. That was the first one, wasn't it? No.
No, it wasn't the first one, but it was right after the open station.
Yeah, right.
We could probably sit here and talk about this all night, but any other questions or comments? Especially roundabout origination.
Just hear that song in my head from Mike Flood and
Any other discussion on this or comments? All right, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned.